The Human Information Processing System. Since the late 1960s, cognitive psychologists have drawn parallels between computers and human thought, as both is involved in the manipulation of information. The modal model of memory which dominated the 1970s and 80s is the Multi-Memory Component Information Processing System of Atkinson and Shiffrin, 1968-1971. Three memory components of the Atkinson and Shiffrin model of human memory. Sensory memory, analogous to keyboard or scanner, or voice recognition system. Short-term memory, analogous to the CPU. Long-term memory, ROM storage where software is stored. Sensory memory systems. Sensory memory is responsible for the encoding of information. Encode, to take in information and convert it to a usable mental form. Sensory memory systems are responsible for transforming environmental input into neural impulses which the short-term memory system can process. There is a different sensory memory system for every human sense: tactile, olfactory, gustatory, auditory, and visual. Cognitive psychologists have focused primarily on auditory and visual sensory stores. Sensory memory systems are typically discussed with respect to attention, capacity and duration. Auditory sensory memory. Echoic memory is the sensory memory component which receives auditory stimulation from the external environment. Attentional aspects of echoic memory: all auditory information above threshold, loud enough to be heard, is processed by the auditory sensory memory to a certain degree. 1. Attention helps us to filter out irrelevant auditory stimuli. Talking to an individual in a crowded or noisy room. However, the irrelevant information is still partially processed, as evidenced by the cocktail party phenomenon. The cocktail party phenomenon. Cherry helped develop the shadowing task. In a shadowing task, the participant is wearing earphones and is told to attend one auditory signal while ignoring a second auditory signal. Shadowing is when the participant has to repeat back, aloud, whatever message they are paying attention to. When participants fail to shadow the attended message, or repeat back the message from the ignored ear, this is evidence that even ignored information is processed to some degree. The cocktail party phenomenon refers to the particular environmental sensitivity we have to the auditory pattern which represents our name. Our name being mentioned captures our attention, and shifts processing from the attended ear to the ignored ear. Other aspects of auditory sensory memory processing: auditory information is largely automatic. As long as the auditory signal is loud enough, the signal will be passed on to short-term memory system. Echoic memory lasts about 2 seconds, making it the longest-lasting sensory memory store. The echoic memory system holds information longer than the actual physical duration of the stimulus, important because auditory information is spread across time. Echoic memory helps to account for the recency effect seen in immediately remembering auditorily presented information. Echoic memory represents raw auditory information, and does not process the auditory signal, only converts it to usable mental data for the short-term memory system to process. Visual sensory memory. Iconic memory, the brief-duration sensory memory store designed to receive and hold visual information. Iconic memory has a very large capacity. All of the visual information in a scene is processed, even though only a limited amount of information can be remembered from a specific icon. Iconic memory is very short in duration, lasting only about 250 to 500 ms. The short duration of an icon is why we cannot remember every single detail of a visual icon, because only a limited amount of information can be quickly passed to short-term memory. The short duration of the icon has important evolutionary advantages. Short-term memory, working memory. Short-term memory, the memory buffer that holds currently and recently processed information, and that can manipulate that information as well. Short-term memory can hold information passed to it from the sensory register and from long-term memory. Working memory refers to the mental processing of currently active information. Short-term memory capacity varies from 5 to 9 pieces of information. Miller, 1956, the magic number 7 plus or 2. Humans can get around this limited capacity of short-term memory by chunking related pieces of information together. The availability heuristic is partially due to short-term memory capacity limitations. Working memory refers more specifically to the mental scratchpad, which allows us to transform information currently available. In short-term memory, the limitation in working memory is due to processing allocation limitation. How many tasks can you perform at one time? Walking and chewing gum requires more processing resources than walking alone. Cell phone use and driving, a dangerous behavior due to processing limitations. Processing of information in short-term memory also allows us to store the results of our information processing in long-term memory for later retrieval and usage. Two common ways of holding information in short-term memory and passing it on to long-term memory. Maintenance rehearsal, effective for holding information in short-term memory, but not very effective for transferring information into long-term memory. Endless repetition of a phone number until you dial it is one example of maintenance rehearsal.